script here. Got it. All right. I didn't need a script for this. Hello, my name is Debbie, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 26th of 98, and I am very grateful to have a sobriety date and to be in a room full of alcoholics with and without reindeer ears on. All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's Threads of Recovery workshop. I have stated I am an alcoholic. Do we have any other alcoholics in the meeting? Wave, smile. All right. Glad you guys are here. Acknowledging God's presence with a moment of silence, I'll follow that with a set-aside prayer. And I just want to take an extra moment, too, as today is Mike McKillop's belly button birthday. So just a quick remembrance, too. Thank you. Set-aside prayer. God, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything that I think I know about myself, everything that I think I know about my fellows, everything I think I know about my own recovery, for a much-needed new experience in you, myself, and my fellows, and a new experience of my own recovery. Help me see the truth. Amen. Thank you. 1058 Threads of Recovery continues to offer virtual workshops 5 days a week. To be included in our weekly email, send your request to threads1058@gmail.com. This will keep you up to date on our workshops. And Annette's putting all this stuff in the chat for us too today. Thank you. Our group follows the 12 traditions. We stick to our singleness of purpose. We ask that everyone act as if they are sitting in a live meeting. Please turn your cameras on if at all possible. We'd love to see your smiling faces. The 7th tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. The contributions help to cover the group's expenses, but the 7th tradition is more than simply paying for rent and other group expenses. It is both a privilege and a responsibility of individual groups and members to ensure that our organization at every level remain forever self-supporting and free of outside influences that might divert us from our primary purpose. The monetary amount of each contribution is secondary to the spiritual connection that joins us in unity with AA groups around the world. 7th tradition contributions can be made using Venmo to @Threads of Recovery -1058. Details are in the chat. And if you don't use Venmo, just contribute to your own AA service entity, okay? This is an open meeting. Open meetings are available to anyone interested in Alcoholics Anonymous' program of recovery from alcoholism. Non-alcoholics are welcome to attend open meetings as observers, and you're welcome to ask questions at the end or whenever John pauses for questions. You are welcome at this meeting to comment. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce John, who is doing a 7-week series for us. And it's being recorded so you guys can share it with your friends and pass it on. So thank you so much, John, for being here today and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. Oops, I didn't make you a co-host. My fault.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Debbie. Good morning, everybody. I hope people around are not suffering the same kind of weather we are in Ontario here. It's kind of stormy and rainy and snowing. Looks a challenge to be outside today, I'll tell you. So let me start off our conversation this morning with a quote. And the quote is from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. Nothing is more precious than being in the present moment, fully alive and fully aware. So I wish you a good day today. And, my thoughts and prayers are with each of you as we go into our holiday season. And, my thoughts for you is that whatever you're experiencing in this moment, that you receive the grace of God that will give you the courage and strength and the wisdom to see your way through it with comfort and ease. So, I have a disease called alcoholism. I belong to a GAPE group in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is John. So just as a quick introduction for those who don't know me, I'm a certified mental health coach, a practitioner in positive psychology, and the first-time author ready to get my book published. The book's name is Loving God with 50 Years of Sobriety. And today is my 50 years of being sober. Actually, 50 years ago, on December 23rd, I come to this program not knowing how to live my life without this terrible affliction and the disease of alcoholism. I also lead workshops in God consciousness, and it's about how I have experienced God in the last 50 years, which is the basis of the book, by the way. And I share it in workshops because I think people are open to how to go about deepening and developing their faith and inviting or accepting the invitation that God gives us to be in relationship, a love relationship with him or her. And I think it's critically important because this is basically a spiritual recovery program. I'm also a founder of a Freedom Hour community, which is a community that is concerned about their mental health. And I say mental health rather than their mental illness. It's a conversation that how we can become mentally healthy and how with practice and through exercises that we then become free. And this introductory workshop is really taken out of that community and to share with you a little bit about how to become emotionally sober or how to deepen your emotional sobriety. So, in summary, we've defined emotional sobriety in the 3 earlier weeks and looked at ways to approach the state of emotional regulation. And I want to use that word, and I want you to remember that word, regulation. It's not about emotional control. If you recall, in many areas of our life, when we try to control something, bad things happen because oftentimes we don't know the line between what we can control and what we cannot. And emotions are a natural response to a stimulus, both internal and external. And we can't control exactly what shows up in a given moment. However, when an emotion does show up, we can learn the skill set to how to regulate it. And this is what this workshop's about. It's about emotional regulation. And we're trying to identify what emotional dysregulation looks like, because sometimes we're in a place when we might say to ourselves, I think I'm emotionally sober. I don't think about alcohol anymore. So what you're could be missing is what does the emotional dysregulation looks like, and we're going to get into a bit of that today as well. So let's just kind of catch up for first-time people that are coming here, and they haven't got the background in the last few meetings. And just give me a moment, and I will. Hopefully, I can share my screen. Yes, I can. And so, the first few weeks we talked about emotional sobriety, what it is, what it isn't, about mindfulness and self-acceptance. And we introduced this idea of we being a captain of our own sailboat. This is a metaphor, by the way. And what we're training the captain or us to do is to be more thoughtful and more attentive and how to develop motivation and what actions are we going to take as we journey in our sailboat to our destination of emotional sobriety. So the captain has the ability to focus on each of these 4 items. And what we're learning is that we can choose to pay attention to what we pay attention to, which is a very powerful idea, by the way. And it shouldn't be just taken lightly, because it's the idea, it's what we focus on delivers the quality or the reduction of quality in our lives. We want to reflect on our thoughts and our beliefs and the interpretations we have, how life is occurring to us. Not that it's reality, by the way. We deliver our lives in very few moments of reality. It's about occurring and how life occurs to us, which gives us the opportunity to choose how it occurs to us. And how do we have the energy? Where does that energy come from to keep moving forward to this kind of Shangri-La of full and complete emotional sobriety? The reasons why we do the things we want to do here, the needs, the beliefs that we have, or the benefits, rather. And finally, and probably most significantly, is action. And I don't want anybody to answer this, by the way, but what I'd like you to do is just to go inside for a moment. If you've been with me for 3 weeks now, and we've taken notes, people asked for the notes and so on, just reflect as honestly as you possibly can. What actions have you taken as a result of this workshop? Now, the only reason I'm challenging this is I don't want you to feel bad. That's not my intention. I don't want you to judge yourself. That's not my intention. But I want you to break open the fog of our intentions versus our actions. They're two very separate things. I have something I call the information illusion. An information illusion is that if I know something, my brain thinks that's enough. So it doesn't really think about action in a sense that I need to go and do something. I have to actually deliberately and intentionally practice something. And I think one of the things I can share with you is that oftentimes we suffer from information overload. In other words, we're going to save up a bunch of knowledge, and one day, someday, you're going to act on it. I want you to know that's completely normal. It is a human condition, if you like. But what we're trying to do here in this last piece of action is to step over the information and get into action, one small piece. One thing to practice. And it could be only 3 or 4 minutes a day. This is the all or nothing thinking that's unhelpful to us. We think we got to be in action 100% of the time, and everything that we do or say or involve ourselves in. And that's not true, because that moment will never come, because life keeps caving in on us. But what we can do is take 5-10 minutes a day out and identify something that we can practice during the day, or a couple of days, or a week for that matter, that will make a difference in your life. Now, here's the challenge. I've heard we have anywhere from 6,500 thoughts a day to 70,000, depending on who's writing that article. And there's no way possibly that we can examine 6,500 at the low end. But what we can do is pull out 1 or 2 moments and to practice something that's going to benefit us and approach us to a deeper relationship with emotional sobriety. We're looking at the route or the journey of the sailboat, and it starts with life domains, which means the different roles we play. So we can have emotional sobriety at AA, but we have very little emotional sobriety with an intimate partner. We find ourselves impatient at times. There's maybe a sense of betrayal or anger or resentment. And in that particular role, we are moving away from emotional sobriety ourselves. So what we're doing, we're examining all our roles to see where emotional sobriety can be dialed up or, in fact, dialed down. We're going to have a new look at emotions. Emotions, I'm going to get into this a little bit later, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But oftentimes we look at our emotions as good or bad, right or wrong, strong or weak. And we judge those emotions and we try to control them, which leads to all kinds of dysfunction. And I'll get into that more. And every sailboat has a steering wheel. the captain who steers the sailboat through the journey of life. And we have that ability to make those value choices. When we talk about practicing principles, we're talking about a steering wheel. We're talking about choosing an alternative way of being rather than allowing old patterns to overtake our lives. We have leaks or weaknesses, and we're attempting to learn how to cope and be resilient with them. And we're no longer fighting the idea that you can get rid of them. We are human experiences. We are a flawed group. So therefore, because we are flawed, there's no sense wishing away weaknesses that's ever going to be present. But what we can do is learn coping skills and resiliency skills to have us go through the weaknesses so they no longer stop us and we feel stuck. Talk a little bit about strengths here. It's oftentimes in AA, the conversation is an overinvestment of what's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why did this always happen to me? That's self-judgment, and it takes us away from emotional sobriety because we have strengths as well, which for most addicts don't even look at them. And if you want to just try a quick experiment, go talk to somebody after this workshop today and ask them, would you mind sharing with me what your character defects are? And you will find that almost to a point of anyone that's been physically sober, that they can identify and articulate with great amount of detail what's the matter with them. Then ask them this question: what's right with you? You'll see the hesitation. You see kind of what I call the fish eyes, the staring. They're looking to gather information because they're not as familiar with their strengths. And this is a big error that we could fall into. It's a myth to think that because we have strengths, we don't need to develop them. That's untrue. And in life, what we're going to do is we're going to face different kinds of weather, storms in our life. It's inevitable. Again, the Buddha's saying, there's two arrows that pierce the heart. One is pain, which is inevitable. The other is suffering, which is avoidable. So we're going to learn how to deal with bad weather through using some skill sets that we've introduced to the last few weeks and then today. And we're focusing today on actually what other boats are, social relationships, to develop positive relationships in our life that will help us get us closer to or deeper in emotional sobriety. And then we're going to identify our destination, and as we go through this journey called life. Emotional sobriety is often thought, if I could just pull out my emotions, I then can manage them or control them. But as CBT indicates in the theory of cognitive behavior therapy, is this, that thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are interconnected. And we did a little exercise, the yes brain, no brain, I think last week or the week before, where we begin to sensitize our body sensations to words. And there was some great sharing going on there, how when they heard the word no several times, that they felt heavy in the body, and they felt hopeless, and they felt a great loss of power. And all we were doing was just saying no. Versus saying yes, the body felt more alive, more motivated. So we cannot pull out the emotions and work on the emotions as separate, because this is an interconnection. It's bidirectional, in other words. So we have to deal with the whole self to continue to develop and deepen our emotional sobriety. And this is what my wheel looks like in this area. It has to do with what contributes to emotional sobriety. It's mindfulness. It's maximizing our strengths. It's positive relationships. It's about having meaning and valued life, purpose. That's what this is about, values and purpose. It's about emotional IQ. It's about learning coping and resiliency skill sets. And it's all about the science of self-acceptance. So these are the spokes of the wheel that contribute to the thing that we're seeking for is emotional sobriety. Now, when you're early in the program, what we're interested in, completely focused on, is physical sobriety or physical abstinence, which is perfect. That's what it looks like. Bill Wilson wrote the article about emotional sobriety 18 years after he remained sober, and he come to realize that he was depressed, and that there was much more to living life than physical sobriety, that he had to learn to deal with what he called the next frontier. So that's pretty much what we talked about. And we talked about mindfulness. We talked about the importance of mindfulness and connecting our heart and our minds together, not as competing factors, but joining once again. And this is really about training our minds, training our brains, developing ourselves. On page 23, which I'm sure you all read and all thought of, that for the addict or the alcoholic, the main problem centers in their mind. So what we're doing is we are training our minds in a particular way that leads us right into emotional sobriety. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. I hope that becomes or is helpful to you to recall what we've done. So this is our fourth time together. The first day we defined emotional sobriety, and some of you wondered why we're looking at contributing factors to move us into emotional sobriety. Perhaps the way in which you're approaching emotional sobriety is controlling or forcing our unwanted and perhaps painful emotions. And we draw a line between what we consider good and bad emotions. So we're judging here at this moment. The approach that there's really no such thing as good or bad emotions. There's only emotions. No matter what comes up in the heart space is a human condition. So to think that you have something that you shouldn't have by nature is a misconception. It is only natural to feel the feelings in which we're feeling. It's natural. And by us trying to suppress it or force it or try to get rid of it only creates more stress and more harm in our lives. So we become emotionally dysfunctional. And we put a lot of effort in trying to change the way in which we feel rather than working with the emotions. See, this is all about relationships. It's all about not having the emotions. It's more about relating to the emotions in a different way. So my approach is there's no such thing as good or bad emotions. There are only emotions. So am I saying hate or anger or resentment, not destructive emotions? Yeah, I'm saying that. I'm saying it because every human being experiences those things. But what is it we do with it is what's important. So if I feel anger, or if I feel impatient, or I'm feeling resentful, what am I going to do with it? What is it doing for me rather than to me? Now, what possibly benefit could I have about feeling anger? Well, I'll tell you, emotions are a natural response to any internal or external stimulus. And it's nature's way of sending us a signal, feedback, if you like, or even a compass pointing to true north. So if I am angry, there's something underneath there that's promoting my anger, some unmet need perhaps, something I can learn from. I don't know if any of you experienced this, but I'm kind of a calm guy at nature. And I kind of overlook things as I go through life. Then one day, somebody does something that sets me off. My hands go up in the air, I'm angry, and I get intolerant. And I wonder why does that happen? Why does that happen? It's because I wasn't dealing with the earlier disappointments, that I kept my mouth shut. I avoided feeling what I was feeling instead of speaking it out. And then it culminates in a moment of eruption. So I didn't have the words to be able to share with people of what I need, what I felt, and what my requests might be to them, thereby avoiding any kind of anger. Now, since I learned how to go about doing that, I don't get angry. I resolve it. I resolve it as early as I possibly can because I now have the words to communicate what it is I'm feeling, and I honor that experience. See, that's what anger did for me. It allowed me to practice strengths that I didn't even know I had. And I wouldn't have known I had if that anger hadn't showed up. So this is how emotions can work for us. A signal, a compass, feedback from the universe that something I've done or said or felt, I'm off my spiritual path. And what I can do now is to reflect on and try to discover what that is so I can create an alternative method on how to deal with it. So let's get started on some sharing. What are you hearing for yourself? What do you disagree with? If you disagree with something, what do you hope to gain?
Armand, would you like to share?
Yes, I would. This is a very different way of looking at things for me. My sponsor has told me that, it's, feelings are natural. It's about, not living in those feelings. Like when things go right or when things go wrong, if I get excited, not allowing that excitement to turn into egotistical, I got this, or something like that. It's about processing what's going on, and then asking my higher power what I need to do next. Versus when I get mad, it's just as easy for me to hang on to my anger and not acknowledge anything useful about it. It's just yeah, you, me, and it that's a hard thing to get out of. I have found that when I am spiritually fit, live, with my higher power, that things are a lot easier to get out of. This approach that was spoke about here today is different. What are these emotions doing for me versus what they're doing to me. That's a very different approach. I'm glad to have heard this today.
Yeah, but thank you for that, because what you brought up is a couple of very important things. We learn to become an observer of our emotions rather than being in the storm. And that's very important. And I also want to share with you that this is a point of view, that you may not agree with the point of view, or you may find some other way of handling it that is working for you and good for you. Good for you. This is not the way of doing things. It is simply my way.
Hi, my name is Sue, and I am an alcoholic. And thank you, John. Wow. I'm taking from this thus far is the word reflection. I didn't know what the problem was. You talked about, I avoided my earlier emotions, and didn't know that I was doing that. And then when it was time to, when the milk spilled on the floor, that's what I exploded about, when it had nothing to do with the milk. And, and that's what I just realized, like, that's what I do. That is my pattern. That is how I run. My pattern is that I stuff all my feelings like a turkey, and don't know how to deal with them, and then I explode. And so that is something that I needed to reflect on. And what I've heard is that you don't stuff them. As they come up, feel it and see why it bothers me. Why is this thing bothering me? And that process, in doing it that way, in that process, I come to see what my triggers are, and then I begin to get into the solution. That is really brand new information and in AA that I've learned. And it's just beautiful. Reflection is not something I don't want to reflect on me. I want to reflect on you, and I want to justify that and, whatever. But it's about me, the changes in me. So that's what I heard about reflection, changes in me, not you. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Lori.
Hi. Thank you, Lori, alcoholic addict. The reason I put my hand up, the reason why I came today's my first time. I was very interested in what you just said about when you don't deal with emotions in the past, when something gets triggered, that's when I have anger, because of not recognizing, working through the feelings that happened in the past. So I'm I'm almost 70 years old. I'm still doing all this stuff that I still having all these emotions that I don't like having. So I'm listening to what you're saying. My emotions are my emotions, but what I'm hoping to hear is about dealing with the emotions as they present, as opposed to pushing them down, and then they get made worse later, amplified. Then they're amplified later. So I'm so interested, because that's what I have profound difficulty with. Like when I'm one-to-one, like, as long as everything's okay between us, there's no need, like I communicate well. But the minute there's something uncomfortable, I'm getting worse, actually, where I'm stifled. I can't say anything. Anyway, so I'm so interested to hear more, and thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.
Hey, everybody. Wanda, grateful for the platform. John, thank you so much. Thank everybody for sharing your truth. I'm personally taking away a lot, and particularly, I like the idea that hearing for the first time that emotions are neither bad nor good, because I might learn concept has been that emotions are bad. So now I can look at it from a different perspective. I also like the fact that I'm learning that I do not have to stuff what doesn't feel good. I deal with it head on and deal with it head on, period. Speaking my truth. And also I like that you once said, which resonates so, is me listening to the critic. Be mindful of what the critic is saying. Because as I listen to that critic, I can respond. I'm reacting. I've been practicing the act of putting myself in the other person's moccasins, and that gives me open-mindedness. I'm not blaming. I'm seeing the other part of the equation, and that's so helpful. And I was at a meeting yesterday, and we talked about the subject, and it was, how am I applying perseverance, or step 10, into all of my affairs, not just mine, and particularly the affairs to the loved ones, my beloved spouse. My pseudo intellect or my pseudo thinking will say that, hey, everybody loves Wanda. But when it comes to my relationship at home with my significant other, I have to dial it up or dial it down so that it's equal, that it's equal, and I'm not blaming or trying to control him, like that. Hey, what's wrong? I get along with everybody but you. So then I have to take the focus off of him, put it on myself, look at his side of the story, and it's been working so well. So this workshop is really having such a positive impact on my social life in relation to my beloved spouse, who I love so dearly. Thanks so much.
Did we hold off the other questions until we move on a little bit? And I got a lot of material I want to cover, and perhaps the next round of questions, you can raise your hand. So again, why is this so important? Why working with the emotions is so important, rather than looking at the emotions, what it's doing to me, and judging myself with my emotions. So when we come to a place of judging something that's good or bad, I want you to get the idea that invariably what happens, we become to judging ourselves, our identity. We don't normally judge our behavior. What we do, we say, I am. So if anger happens to be a particular emotion that shows up fairly often, as an example, you say, well, I am an angry person. And then you feel less than because you made that declaration. What's wrong with me? Now you're going down a rabbit hole of being diminished as a person. So I want you to see a fork in the road here. There's a decision point. A choice can be made. Or I can see what anger is doing for me and what is it pointing to, so I can use a strength I have. And I love what Wanda said, because it's perfect what she said. Either I could dial it up or dial it down. The assumption with that is I have it to be able to dial it up or dial it down. So the strength I have to be with the emotion of anger, I could then practice that strength and build my character and strengthen my values, and also have a better self-image of myself as I go through this process. See, that's what emotional sobriety is about, is how do we feel about ourselves? What's our world view? How do we see others? How do we see the other boats? What do we do in our storms of our life? And if you're just focusing on the leaks of the boat, the weaknesses, you begin to see all the other areas of our life, which we are a part of, gets ignored. So great work, Juan, great work. So just let me get back on track. So attempting to control our emotions or enforcing them results in what is called rumination. And the lady before, Wanda, indicated that. It's also called rebounding. So when we avoid emotions by judging them, because we're not interested in processing them at that moment, judging means we've concluded something. So we're not processing those emotions. So they get stuffed somewhere and it gets unprocessed, but they don't go away. They may leave us temporarily, but they're going to come back in something that is called rumination. In other words, they're going to continue to come back to us all the time, which will include a longer duration and a greater intensity. Rebounding really means the same thing. It jumps back at us at some point in time. And this leads to frustration, anxiety, restlessness, depression, and isolation. See, these are serious consequences of not dealing with our emotions. And we need to see that in how we view ourselves honestly. And some of the words we use will give us some indication. Oh, I should feel this way, or I shouldn't feel that way. Or I must, or I need to. I have to. These are all words of judgment and conclusions about ourselves in a diminished dimension. And the other side sounds very different. I want to. I get to do this. I'm looking for a strength to be able to deal with whatever it is I want to deal with here. Two very different views. One, the mental consequences of diminishment and self-judging, and the other one is all about learning, a learning or growth mindset. The first one is a fixed mindset. That's what we do when we judge. We're fixed. And the other is learning. And if we can approach our life with a learning concept, a growth mindset, everything that happens to us is an opportunity to practice a strength that we may not even know we have. And yet it can show up by just looking at it and seeing what's underneath there for us. So this invites, this conclusions we have about good or bad invites self-judgment, which is the inner critic. And now we're in a vicious cycle of looking at our weaknesses only. And friends, I say this from the bottom of my heart. You are greater than your weaknesses. You are greater than the disease that you have. You are something that you have I call a sacred identity. You were given purpose and meaning. You were given this experience of addiction so that you could be a leader in this world to demonstrate what's possible in recovery. That's a beautiful invitation that you've accepted. So all of this, if you go down that rabbit hole of judgment, it increases self-doubt, increases disappointment, discouragement. And what happens is the motivation for us to continue goes away. We allow distractions come in and we get what we would normally call stuck. And in those moments when we're stuck emotionally and we feel poorly about ourselves and we're being hounded harshly by this inner critic, it actually hurts us physically. Science has proven it reduces our immune system, contributes to serious physical illness. It also increases our chance to go back to our primary addiction or start a secondary addiction to get comfort from our dis-ease. So emotional sobriety is recognizing, understanding, and effectively regulating emotional states. It involves being aware of our emotions, and this is where mindfulness comes in our week one. That we practice mindfulness, we become aware, we're awake. You know, in step 12, it talks about a spiritual awakening. So before we were awakened, we were asleep. We were in automation. We were relying mostly on habits. But in mindfulness, we become awake. We become aware. We're connected to our bodies. We're not self-judging. We're in the experience, learning, understanding, being curious. This is where choices are made. If you ever wondered, say, as an example, if you ever said to yourself, well, I'm going to start exercising, I really feel lousy about myself, and I know exercising will help, and I hear all the benefits of exercising, I understand the consequences of not exercising, I'm going to start exercising. And it sounds like a wonderful intention, doesn't it? What happens next day? You don't exercise. Next day, you don't exercise. And all of a sudden you think, I want to do that, and yet I'm not doing it. Why? What is it in me that's preventing me from fulfilling what I want to do intendingly? And it's because we are in automation. It's not because you have poor discipline or any of this other reasonable excuses that we can come up with. It's because we're not mindful. Mindfulness is really, in my view, the foundational skill set to make changes. We become aware. And in AA, we use the word pause. We're going to pause. What happens, and you may find this interesting or you may not, but the amygdala, the part of the brain which processes emotions, is the first thing that shows up in a stimulus. That's what shows up. So the emotions get processed immediately. What comes next is reason and logic through our prefrontal cortex. That's why this idea of pause is so very important, to allow the prefrontal cortex to catch up to the amygdala. We may make better and different choices for ourselves if we just paused and ask ourselves a few questions. Is this good for me? Is this healthy for me? Is there a better way of viewing this? Is there a better direction I could take? And then, because the adult in you, once starts looking at this, will more often make the better choices. Now, if you don't know that about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, you end up blaming yourself. And you create a falsehood, a misconception is I'm weak, I'm not good enough. And it has nothing to do with that. There's just not an understanding of how the brain is functioning. So what I'm trying to give to you is this: don't be so quick to blame yourself. Look, be curious, be interested, develop your growth mindset, and you'll be amazed at what comes out of it. So practicing mindfulness is exploring different coping strategies that can help us be more emotionally balanced and have healthier relationships with others and ourselves. Emotional sobriety also encourages us to embrace emotion or positive emotions such as joy and contentment, gratitude and love. See, what happens is when we cut ourselves off from what we call the bad emotions, we also cut off ourselves the ability to feel the joy and the pleasure and the excitement and enthusiasm of living life. Because what we've done is cut off our heart space. We need to be open to all the experiences that life is giving us. And what we need to learn is how to be with it. So sobriety, or emotional sobriety, not only helps us better regulating our feelings and reactions, it helps us help to be more meaningful and have a more fulfilling life. By practicing emotional sobriety, we can gain greater insight into our emotional landscape because we're curious. In judging, there's no learning. The learning stops when we judge because we've concluded something. But if you have a growth mindset and learning, you begin to start seeing things that you never saw before. You start to put words to different emotions. And you may know this already, that the same chemicals go through the brain with fear and excitement. Exactly the same chemicals. There's no difference. But we may interpret it as fear, and someone else may interpret it as excitement. And chemically, there's absolutely no difference going on in the brain. So as you begin to be open to learning more about emotional landscapes, we begin to become more aware of the language and how to approach and label these emotions that we're having. So we're better equipped to respond effectively to challenging situations. Establishing healthy boundaries and learning to be assertive can help us manage our emotions and more effectively. Additionally, engaging in activities that promote emotional well-being, such as exercise, meditation, and mindfulness, can help foster emotional sobriety. You may want to consider working with a mental health coach, or you may want to find a group of people in your group that are interested in the conversation and the practice of specifically emotional sobriety. So, emotional sobriety is vital to cultivating and leading a more balanced and fulfilling life. Becoming emotionally sober can lead us to better understand ourselves, develop healthier relationships with others, and obviously being kinder to ourselves, all of which can lead to greater happiness and contentment. You'll notice in people who have sparkling eyes, there's a shine to them, there's a sparkle to them. They're excited, they're enthusiastic, they have zest for living. And we get to express them in different ways. Of course, we're not all the same, but you get the sense of the energy that people with emotional sobriety have, that they have purpose, they walk with meaning, versus people who just kind of walk around and say, I'm okay. See, there's no hiding this. There's no hiding it, friends. Either you get up in the morning and you're excited to do whatever you're doing, or you're not. And what happens when we're approaching and deepening our emotional regularity is that we live life with greater clarity and purpose. So basically finding or looking for, noticing what we pay attention to in emotional sobriety can help us lead a healthier, happier life by really having those kinds of conversations with the people that are around you, your small group of people. But what we need is proper support and guidance to effectively deal with our emotions and develop healthier relationships and find greater satisfaction in life, so we can make better, conscious and deliberate choices that lead to a happy and more meaningful life. So, what are some of the consequences of low emotional sobriety? And I've named a few, but I just want to go through 10 very quickly. The inability to regulate emotions. In other words, people who have little emotional sobriety often have difficulty in correctly identifying, managing, and expressing their emotions effectively. They get bottled up, they get stiff, they go silent, they freeze. The lack of emotional regulation leads to outbursts, tantrums, and anger when dealing with difficult situations. So we fight. This idea of fight and flee, or fight, fleeing, or freezing are signs of our emotional well-being. Number 2 is problem-solving skills. Our low emotional sobriety will lead to a person relying heavily on instinctual reactions, that amygdala idea. Instead of using rational thinking and problem-solving techniques, we kind of do what we feel. It's an emotional decision or emotional behavior that drives us, not one that's based in reason and logic. And as a result, they often help to identify solutions to problems and challenges, and not in a good way. Number 3 is with difficulty understanding the feelings of others. So we can only provide what we have. And if we're having difficulties in understanding our feelings, it's impossible to begin to understand the feelings of others. So it interferes with our relationships if we have low emotional sobrieties. So we may struggle to interpret other people's nonverbal cues and facial expressions, leading them to misinterpret the emotions behind another person's words and actions. This can create confusion in interpersonal relationships and cause misunderstanding in the social situations. People with low emotional sobriety are impulsive. Going back to the amygdala idea. So there's a sign here. Am I impulsive? Those with low emotional sobriety tend to act quickly without considering the consequences of their behavior first. Not only do they fail to think things through before reacting, but also this impulsivity can lead to be dangerous and can lead in inappropriate decisions or behaviors that could have been avoided if more thought had been given beforehand. Poor self-reflection. One key indicator of low emotional sobriety is the being unable to properly reflect on one's thoughts and feelings, often due with an inability or unwillingness to explore one's innermost feelings or experiences honestly to gain greater insight into oneself. This is what we do in step 10. We're open to and developing what our experiences actually are. Sometimes we get caught we measure ourselves what's in the big book instead of measuring ourselves by our experience. So we use the word should a lot. What we want to do is get clear and be honest with the experiences that we're actually experiencing. Difficulty connecting emotionally with others. Due to insufficient understanding of our own emotions, those of others, individuals with low self-sobriety, may find it hard to connect with an intimate level with others, leading them into toxic relationships and even isolation from potential positive social interactions altogether. Number 7 is the inability to express oneself clearly. Individuals who are lacking vital emotional sobriety may find difficulty in accurately conveying their thoughts and feelings for fear of being judged harshly by those around them, or not being taken seriously due to misunderstandings stemming from poor communication skills, as well as lack of self-confidence in expressing oneself openly and honestly without fear or judgment from others. Being overly dependent on external validation. People who lack healthy levels of emotional sobriety usually rely solely on external validation, such as praise from others, to feel good about themselves instead of seeking out internal sources, such as self-approval, the practice of self-approval, which can help build strong self-esteem over time. Number 9, the tendency towards negative thinking. I don't think anybody needs lessons in that. I think each of us are probably masters at it. But this is an indication of our level of emotional sobriety. And lastly, we'll get to some more sharing. We're easily overwhelmed by stressors. We tend to worry, concerned about, feeling imbalanced, lacking adequate levels of emotional sobriety, typically experience higher levels of stress when faced with complex tasks when compared to those processing stronger levels of ES, emotional sobriety, since they cannot roll off stressful responses quicker, thus prolong the amount of time spent in a stressed out state, which can take its toll mentally if left unchecked for long periods of time. So let's go back to hear what you're hearing and sharing what you'd like to share.
Robin said her question got answered, so she was going to lower her hand. Did somebody else have their hand up last time, but I don't remember who? Anybody like to wave your hand or raise your hand if you can't figure out how? Deirdre.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm Deirdre, I'm an alcoholic. John, thank you so much. You're right on time. So I'm getting a lot out of it, I guess, as a summary. I've had some mental health issues lately. I'm 22 years sober, and I didn't really realize how much of an expectation I put on myself and others have put on me to be okay because I'm sober. You know, I love the self-judgment, pointing that out. I love honoring the experience. So I'm feeling more anger than I really probably ever have in sobriety. You know, when mental health stuff happens, people they don't know what to say, so they're not friends, or sponsees leave, things like that. And that's been happening. And so I guess it's just right on time because I can't keep beating myself up for feeling that. I really can't. It doesn't work anyway. And it leads to more anger at myself, which means then I'm just consumed. So I think what I was doing for the past about 10 years is not dealing with emotions because, like you said, I'm measuring myself with what's in the big book. That's not bad. Like, I don't want to say anything negative about the big book, but just to say, well, it says I can't have resentment, so I don't have it. Or like I prayed a few times, so it must be gone. Or, you know, I can't think of the right word, self-righteous anger. When it says that you can't have those things, I think in AA, we tend to feel them for a second, be ashamed of them, and be like, okay, I can't have that anymore. And think that it's gone, but it's not. And I think that's what happened with this mental health stuff. A lot of things had piled up, and yeah, and so it's really dangerous. And now that you're talking about all the things that emotional sobriety, like the checklist, and I'm sitting here going, ooh, I am not emotionally sober right now. And that's okay. That's where I'm at. I need to keep working on it. I need to keep learning. I need to stop looking at it as a negative experience and just know that I'm on a journey to something big. I mean, everything's being shaken up in my life. And yes, I need to trust God, but I also need to trust that what I feel, I need to be feeling. Yeah, and stop beating myself up. So thank you so much. You're exactly right on what I needed to hear, as usual, right? Thank you.
So I just want to make a comment because what you bring up is so vitally important. You see, when I hear your share, what I'm hearing you doing is waking up. That's what you're discovering something that wasn't there for you before. And because you're discovering it, you're seeing an opportunity. Now, you may not know what to do next, which requires more resources, by the way. That's all it requires. However, you're now in a place of advancing your emotional sobriety because now you're aware. So what I hear is something extremely positive, nothing negative. I hear an advancement of a human being marching towards a goal of self-fulfillment. That's what I hear. And the other thing I want to point out is this, and I think this is so vitally important. Where's God in all your conversation, John? I hear that sometimes, particularly because I have this other workshop called God Consciousness. Where's God fit into what you're saying, John? And I want to say this to you because I think this is also important. When I got my certification as a mental health coach, it's actually a certification of a Christian mental health coach. And I leave the word Christian out, not because I'm ashamed of it, but I don't want to turn anybody off with it. When I went, I went through the certification, and there were psychologists, social workers, pastors were delivering the information. And what they kept repeating is this, and it's stuck in my head. Don't over spiritualize mental health. Now, I was surprised by that remark. So how does this fit in with the spiritual recovery and the skill sets we're talking about here today? I believe this, that God is causing us. We talk about the will of God. What does will mean? Will means it's creating. He's causing something in me. He's raising my curiosity. Let me just make a metaphor of this so we all can identify what I'm trying to say to you. God has caused me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. God didn't give me the skill sets that are in the big book. I studied those things. So was that interfering with God's plan? No. God's causing me to move forward, to grow and expand in my life. He's given that in my sacred identity. But he's saying to me, John, what you need to do, you may not know how to do what I'm causing. Go learn. And this is where my spiritual life meets my skill set life. Anyway, okay. Thank you for your great share, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Deirdre. And Megan P. is the one that had her hand up last time. So I'm going to go out of order, guys. Then Joan, then Andrea.
Thank you, Debbie. I was letting my dog out before when I heard you call me, so thanks. Thank you so much, John. This has been so amazing. And something just really clicked in for me through the last response, even that solidified what I was going to say before, that really inspired me. So it's almost like when I first came into the program, I was at a place where I was admitting complete defeat over alcoholism. And that served me really well. And then I do feel like this workshop came at like a perfect time for me where I am in my sobriety, because I felt a little stagnant in certain ways and unsure of what my path was going to be. But I'm realizing that kind of going back to step one with the emotional piece, by really coming at it from that same inspiration and positive direction, instead of why am I not already like this, coming at it from a place of like, you've just kept reinforcing this positive direction in a way that has allowed me to be actually excited instead of discouraged about next leveling where I'm going. So instead of saying, oh, I have 7.5 years, man, this is still kind of hanging me up here. And what's wrong with me? What are my character defects? Do I need to correct? Because that's totally my MO, as is the all or nothing mentality. So I love also the key of taking 5 or 10 minutes a day. And I'm going to do that in relation to looking at what's going right. And I did come to a point where I hired a coach recently to kind of help me move through some stuff that I felt like I needed help with. And, I was, to my surprise, after our first session of me talking about family stuff that came up around Thanksgiving and stuff I was very disappointed in having internal reactions to, she was like, well, what went right? And that I find that that's like the approach here. It's just so much more hopeful than what can I correct in myself in this like militant way that I've been used to. So thank you so much. I feel very inspired by this whole workshop. Thanks.
Good. I'm so glad. So one of the things we come to realize is that the more we beat up on ourselves, and everybody has a definition, by the way, and some of us say, well, I'm not as hard on as I used to be, but we're operating in a context. A context is often unconscious. So when we say what's wrong with me, we're operating in a harsh environment and a diminishing environment, which the only outcome naturally happens is we get stuck. We lose the energy of living. But we can't see it because no one has pointed out this context. That's the problem with weakness focus. We become so diminished by that, we end up saying, well, I just have to accept it. When really what they mean is, I'm just giving up. See, there's a difference between acceptance and giving up. And for us, we need to find out where that line is. Because when we accept something, we didn't give up. we move forward in our lives versus, okay, there's an opportunity for me. Now, I don't know if I did this last week or not. If you just give me one more moment. I want you to think of a problem that you recently had that you struggled with. So just get into that experience, everybody, if you would. Just some problem. It doesn't have to be significant. It can be small. But I want you to experience the inner experience that you had with that problem. And naturally, what would come out of the language was struggle. I'm struggling with this. Now, I want you to just to shake that off for a moment, now that you've gone and found that experience and remember what that was like. Now I want you to change the problem into a word called opportunity. And I want you to remove the word struggle to discover. So that same situation that we're talking about, look at it as an opportunity for you to discover something magnificent about yourself. How different does that feel? Anybody? I would like somebody just to give me the difference of how that feels to you.
Gambre, go ahead.
I am Deborah. I'm an alcoholic. This question was just it. You did it last week. It is the same question, but I have a different angle to it today. And I really must say, this whole workshop, I've been working with this mindfulness for a long time. And from what you said last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't, it doesn't matter. I watch myself, how I talk to myself. And I'm changing this. I'm on that for a long time, but something is shifting here and it's so hurtful. And on the other hand, I'm really thankful that I experienced that, because I can get in 2 seconds my worst enemy, with this disease. And the other thing is shifting to the opportunities and saying, okay, whatever comes my way is something to learn here, to put it in the positive perspective. And that changing really hurts. But I'm really, really very thankful for that opportunity here. Because I'm in Al-Anon too, and there you learn to love yourself, to become your best friend. And I thought I'm there already, but I think this is a lifelong journey. But thank you for that. And to see that everything which comes my way is an opportunity. And I thank you for that. Thanks for letting me share.
Here's the neat thing about what I've just said, I want you to experience. Some people will say, well, John, aren't you putting on a rose-colored glasses? You're not really telling the truth. Let's go back to the earlier part of what we talked about. Life is about occurring. It's not about reality. It's about occurring. So because our default might be a problem struggling occurring, that sounds and feels like the opportunity in discovering sounds like it's counterfeit, but it isn't. It has equal viability. We're just not used to using it that way. But once we start to practice it, we begin to see things that we could never see before, and then weakness focus. I've been at this for 50 years. It amazes me how quickly we can change, but we want to hang in to the problems of our life. We want to keep stirring it. We want to keep digging down. We've got to find out what's wrong here. And years can go by. And it's all a waste of time. It really is. It's just a waste of time. Let's look for what's good about us, what's beautiful about us. Look at our hearts. Look at the reason we come here. We could be better equipped as a human being as a result of going to meetings. That's fantastic. That's unbelievable. Anyway, thank you for your share.
Thank you. Joan, it really is your turn this time.
That's fine, Debbie. Not a bother. Thank you, John. That was lovely. Yeah, I'm just wrote something down here. You know, Joan Alcoholic. When we judge others, you know, we are placing a dependence on them, and it can be very insidious, you know. And I used to find that before, you know. And we are placing expectation on them to give us something that we want. So, you know, instead of keeping an open mind and just, you know, standing back and letting them be the way they are, you know, and that's why, and I used to get angry before when I didn't get what my needs met. So I sort of learned, because I did mindfulness before, you know, and it is so important to be aware all the time, because then you're not getting caught up in this anger, you know, you're not getting caught up in this emotion too much. You're sort of aware of the emotions or the thoughts that go on before you get into that state of anger, you know. And is that making sense? And it's honesty as well with the feeling that's going on. It's saying, you know, it's to own the feeling and not to kind of blame others for the way I feel. I'm feeling this way. It's my anger. It's my emotion. What can I do with it? You know, yeah. And pause is very important, John. Yeah, you said that there. Because if we act straight away, if the anger drives us, we're lost, you know, completely. We're in there, you know, and then there's a whole lot of other emotions that can come up. There's guilt and there's, you know, and whatnot. But yeah, that's for me. I don't know if I'm making sense or not. You know, it's also very important. What I find good for me is to look at the other person. Maybe, you know, they have, if it's with somebody, if I'm angry with somebody, look at what maybe they could have something going on in their lives. Change the thought process as well. I don't know whether I'm making sense or not, but that's the way I try to manage, you know, while doing the 10th step during the daytime. When emotions do come up, I try to nip them in the bud and just kind of say, well, where am I? What's this about? Do you know, it kind of works for me anyway. I don't know.
Beautiful. Good for you. Good for you.
Thank you, Joan. Andrea?
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Alcoholic Andrea. And thank you, John, and everybody for your shares. You know, just to touch on real quick about what you said about, you know, what's coming up for you right now and this waking up, right? And this is what's happening for me right now. And as I've started attending your workshop, how I've realized that my emotional sobriety, how I'm growing compared to when I first started coming to this series. And Megan said something in her share, and not to crosstalk, but she said next leveling. And that really hit me, because I'm like, you know, what I've realized is that as I'm growing in my emotional sobriety, and after being, you know, almost 10 years clean and sober, you know, I thought I was worse off than what I really was right here, right now, today, right? And I've realized how much over this short period of time, over these past, you know, 4 weeks, how I've grown already, and how much you know, I've done. There's other things that are coming into play that God in the universe has thrown in my path, and you know, but I'm realizing that in growing in my emotional sobriety, that others are still remaining the same. And learning that, you know, we're talking about struggles, to changing the word struggle to discover how I've been discovering how much I'm changing, but yet they are still, sorry, a phone call keeps coming through, but they are still staying the same. And I have to remember that. And there's new levels that have come into play for me that are helping me expand and grow this emotional sobriety, and other resources that I've been that have come into my path, like a Reiki healer who has been a huge part along this journey with me right now, only for the past couple of weeks. But that knowing that, how do I discover these opportunities? How do I work with them today when I'm changing and say my partner, for example, is still remaining the same? Right. That's where I think it's become a challenge, and it's something that I'm working on. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Neil, I just ask you to unmute.
Hey.
We can hear you.
Sorry, I thought I was further down the line of the hands. Hi everyone, I'm Neil, and I'm a grateful alcoholic and addict, 23 years clean and sober. And this is, I heard one of your shares earlier, John, on Audios Anonymous, and I was immediately attracted to it. There was so much interesting information coming out from the share, and I just wanted to talk about what you said about the word, about changing the word from struggle. I think you said I've forgotten what you said now, but you said about
opportunity.
That's it, opportunity. Sorry, it's all quite new to me, this stuff. And because you started off your share at the beginning talking about being present. I think you said about being present and being in the moment. And that is been one of my real difficulties, because I do a lot of stuff like listen to Eckhart Tolle and different stuff like that about being present. But yet I find it so difficult to be present. I'm at the moment, I'm making sort of these plans in my mind to make some quite big changes. And it means possibly moving, buying something abroad. I've done this before. I moved from London to Australia, then Australia to Chester. And I've sort of moved around a bit now, and I've then gone through a 15-year divorce, and which I realised I was very dependent on my ex-partner to help me with a lot of things. So I've had some huge difficulties over the last couple of years going through different changes, and I'm really just was trying to find out if anyone has problems in that area of presence, and not trying to how to sort of stop those thoughts. Although I want to make plans, it becomes a little bit too much sometimes, and I wondered if that was something that is that a bad thing, or is that a good? I just don't know. I don't know if I'm sort of getting a bit lost in presence and future.
Yeah. Well, Neil, I think you bring up a great question, and I'm going to tell you why. Most of us collapse planning with living in the moment. They're two different things. If we think we can get through life without planning, there's going to be a wake-up call. It's like, I think I'm going to go to Chicago today. I don't know how to get there, but I'm going. I jump in my car and I hope for the best. You wouldn't do that. I mean, it would be absolutely ridiculous even to think that way. I would plan my trip. So living in the present moment isn't competing with planning. They're two separate things. Now, what can we do about mindfulness? This is what I want everybody to get here. What you can do with mindfulness is not reading a book totally on Eckhart Tolle, although he's very good and excellent. What you can start with is a practice of paying attention to your breath a minute at a time. That's all. You see, I'm going to share something with you. People who are extremely effective, they read something to solve a problem. And this happens over the research I've done along with my son, because we're looking to see what's the difference between an action person and a person that likes to read about. So the difference is, and it's very consistent, by the way, an effective person, they pick up a book to solve a problem. The moment they have a solution, they put the book down. They don't read it from cover to cover. They go and do something and take on a suggested practice of how to achieve what it is they want to achieve. See, it's in the action that we learn to become more mindful. The practicing of breathing and paying attention to your breath catapults you to the present moment. Can you be, and now we got to look out for expectations. If I asked you to, would you be interested in running a marathon? And you've never ran before. And I said, okay, there's one coming up next Wednesday. You would look at me and say, you're nuts. But that's what we expect of ourselves in terms of mindfulness. We think, well, just because I want to be mindful, I should be more mindful. But what we have to do, like in marathon training, we have to take practice short stops things till we get stronger and more in shape. And then we grow it from there. And it's the same thing with mindfulness. Make up your mind for 3 minutes today to focus on your breath. And tomorrow it might be 4 minutes, or it might not be. But just to set aside some time for yourself to practice mindfulness. That's what I suggest. I have a hard stop at 12:30 again, friends. And I haven't got through half the material. I wanted to share with you an exercise on communication for positive relationships, which I'm not going to be able to get to, unfortunately, nor have I shared with you the benefits of emotional sobriety. So I'm sorry. So we're going to have to pick it up next week. So I guess we got time for one more share if we would.
Alyssa, would you like to share? And I apologize, I went out of order. Neil was right.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thanks so much. I'm Alyssa, alcoholic, and when you're talking about like emotionally irregulated and just that unwell, a lot of my thoughts go towards my family, and at the time I knew that was wrong, and I spent my life trying not to be like that, and I would say that I would under-exist. And I like when the Al-Anon says brownout, because emotionally I wasn't even there. And now in recovery, I feel as though they're still wrong, my family, and that I'm right. And is there such a thing as even going past that, and feeling that anger too much? And maybe they were right. I don't know.
So once you get the experience of you observing that someone's wrong, I would say you're highly judgmental on yourself. So what you're doing, your world is occurring as something is either right or wrong, black and white. And because of that judgment, you see the world that way and you experience life that way. Instead of saying, wow, I come to realize that there's something more here than what I have. What is it? How can I connect? What's going on here? What strength can I use to be more intimate and open with my family? See, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just listening to what's occurring to you. And again, friends, if I could just, I'm 75 years old. I've struggled in life and all the things I've done wrong and the places I fell short in, the mistakes I made, and beat myself up. I could go on and on about this. But where I'm at is every experience that we have, everything is an opportunity for us to grow and discover more about ourselves that we never knew. But that takes where we place our attention. If you can shift your attention from what's wrong to what can be improved, then you'll be surprised at what may open up for you. Be kind to yourself. You know, you just got to know that God loves you, and that what you're doing in your life journey, because we're all apprenticing this, by the way. Nobody can stand up at a podium and say, this is the way to deal with life. We're all apprenticing at life, and we're all trying to learn how to work within our universe, or in what we're doing with the people that are around us and so on. We're trying to sort all of this stuff out. And as long as your heart and your desire is to keep moving forward, what you're going to discover for yourself is something brand new and beautiful. I know it. I know it. So keep up the good work. Keep it up.
Thank you so much, John. So much. And I know you've got a hard stop, so let's all unmute and yell, Happy birthday, John!
Happy birthday, John!
Happy birthday, the century.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Christmas. Enjoy the
you.
season.
And happy return to everybody.
Thank
you.
Take care.
Thank you,
We'll
everyone.
finish off this.
Have a great
this
weekend.
Okay, we'll finish off next week with this piece.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Thank you. Great meeting. Merry Christmas.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. I got people out of order and didn't call on people. Joanne
Not
still
at
had her
all.
hand up.
You did great. You did great.
Everything
Debbie.
happened that needed to happen.
You're fantastic.
Thank you.
As we say in Ireland, you're playing a blinder.
My what?
That's what we say in Ireland. You're playing a blinder.
Woo. I don't know what that
That's the
is,
saying
but
we
it sounds
have in
great.
Ireland.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely weekend.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Laurie.
Same to you,
Great group.
Neil. God
Yeah,
bless.
it's very interesting. Thanks.
Yeah. We'll be
Take
here again
care,
next week.
everybody.
All
See you
right.
next
Next
week.
week. Cheers. Thanks.
Yeah.
Holidays.
Bye. All right. We
And
need to
love
grab
ya.
the chat. Bye, Annette. Thanks for your help today.
Oh, anytime, sweetheart. And happy holidays. Stay safe. Stay warm. Love you guys so much.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for waving, Lori. I saw that and I was like, oh no. So I'm glad it all worked out. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. We'll see you
Bye.
next week.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay. Brenda, I'll get your email.